Hello everybody, tonight we're going to start project 22, which is the gooseneck elbow 135 degree bend on that. So graded plus minus an eighth of an inch there. To make up the 135, we're going to use a 90 degree configuration along with a 45 degree configuration here. The next page of the document's just got kind of the layout that matches with some of the dimensions on this sheet here to get that initial start. But this is the page on the next one here is the dimensions that we're actually going to cut this out to. So first thing that I got in front of me I'm looking at here is it looks like I've got a 6-inch opening on the left hand and the right hand cheek there, and then it comes up from the base to 5 inches to my pivot point, and then we start the heel and the throat and the heel there all the way around until we get our 135 degree indication point there. So let's go at that. It appears that we need a 3/4 of an inch mark across the bottom here, so I'm going to start with that with my scribe. And I didn't really have a size for a height or anything, so I had a section of sheet steel that was left over, or you can just draw this on the end of an 8-foot section if you have to, and then we'll cut off the length that we need. But looking at the 3/4 of an inch is the first mark that we're going to put on there. Start with that base. And I'm going to try to draw the left and the right. I think there might be enough room. I'm hoping. We're going to find out. If not, we'll have to flip the sheet over and draw it on the other side. So 3/4 inch from this corner as well. And then down this edge here, up to a 5-inch height, that we need a 1/4 inch take up for our lock form on that. So let's put that on there next, about 5 inches high, something like that, and we'll do the same on the other side. Then with my tape measure, I'm going to measure up 5 inches to my pivot point. And then I might as well do the same over here someplace. Take my straight edge and we'll make myself a mark there. Okay, I've got the 1/4 inch mark here. Now I'm going to establish the 6-inch dimension in between the marks, and then that additional inner 1/4 inch for the throat. So from the edge of the sheet, we're looking at 6 1/4 to this mark and 6 1/2 to the innermost mark. Okay. So this is going to be the start of the section of the base of the duct here. Now I'm going to get ready to establish this pivot point over here, which is 5 inches up off the base of the sheet and 4 inches over from this 6 1/4 from that edge of that sheet mark. So let's see, we're looking at 10 1/4 inches to that pivot point from the edge of the sheet. 10 1/4 inches. We're going to put a mark there, and then I might as well just put a divot right where they crossed. Now that's going to be, if I can show you this or not, the 12 inch is my innermost mark right up here. I'm sitting on the 12 here. So that divot should be 4 inches from that, which it is. So that works out really nicely. I'm going to take my square right where that divot is, and I'm going to extend that up beyond the sheet so I know where my 90-degree connection is going to be. Later on I'm going to have to extend that even further, most likely, to establish my 135 degrees, being it's 90 plus 45 will give us that. Something like that there. Now that I've got my pivot point in the first 90, I might as well just extend this line out a little further this direction as well, so I can bisect the 90-degree points there, split them in half, and find the 45-degree point, or rather the 135-degree point from here. Alright. So first things first, we need to have our radius, which is a 4-inch radius to the inner edge, or the inner bend of the throat there. So let's set this at 4 inches. You can use your square or tape measure or whichever. So I'm going to set it at 1 5, which makes our 4 on our ruler. Right to that point, and then I'm going to pull that around to 135 degrees, maybe a little beyond there. Actually, I might as well just keep going, because I needed this section, pulled it over to 180 degrees. I need to split this 90-degree section in half to establish the 45 to make the 135 degrees all the way around. So we're going to use the bisect method. Basically, we got a 90-degree point here, and then we're going to find the midway point between them by striking an arc here and setting the point back up here and striking the opposite arc. And I see that I didn't go far enough on this one, so I'm going to extend that a little bit beyond. And then with my straight edge, we'll run that all the way up through there. I don't know if you can see them points there right by my finger here. And that opening has to be at least 6 inches, which it appears I got about 7 inches, so that should work just fine. Okay, so from here all the way around we should have 135 degrees. Permitted the 90s off the edge of the sheet were correct, and everything else was the absolute same there. Alright, back to my radius. 4-inch radius all the way around 135 degrees is where I stopped at that area there. And now I'm going to deduct a 1/4 of an inch off of that. So using my ruler again, before I had it set at 1 5 for the 4 inches, now I'm going to set it at 1 4 3/4 for the 3 3/4 inch dimension, which should come out right again on that previously marked line over here. And then we'll pull that around to the 135 degree mark as well. So essentially the inside throat is done with the radius. We just got to add on these 2 1-inch sections here for bending of the for the area to fasten the screen, and we also got to finish up the radius of the outermost heel, and we're going to do that next. So let's take our radius of the outermost, which is going to be a dimension of, we got, let's see, 6 and 4, and then later on, yes, this is the additional 1/4. So I'm going to set it at 10 inches. or 1 and 11. And that should transfer to my innermost mark, which it does. And then I've got to add on the additional exterior quarter over here. So I'm going to add a 1/4 inch on here rather than 1 and 11. We're going to go to 1 and 11 and 1/4. For a 10 and 1/4 inch dimension there. And that should come out right there. And again, over here, a 1/4 inch beyond as well. Okay. If we did everything correctly, we should have maintained a 6-inch dimension, and we did, all the way around that radius. So that seemed to turn out pretty nicely. The last thing for us to do then is to add on our 2 1-inch lips there for our bins for our screen. Try to demonstrate that right here on the project. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. Establish the 90, yeah, you can use your square. You can just run that right out there, or you can bisect the 180-degree mark. So I'm going to do the more challenging one, but a little bit more precise, I think, on that. And we're going to bisect the 180-degree mark in this area someplace. So we'll put a mark up here and down here someplace. And then we're going to open them up to any larger random size. We'll put a strike out here, the arc out there, and then we're going to strike an arc from the other direction somewhere. And where they cross from that point should be a straight 90-degree section. We only have to bring that out 2 inches off the sheet, or off the edge of the previously set marks there. So we'll pull that out a couple inches here. And if you want, if I extend this on here, we can do the same on the opposite edge there. If we extend it, again, just bisect the 180-degree mark with your dividers. But as you get more and more marks on here, you've got to have your head on straight so you don't mess up the right and get on the wrong mark. Make it bigger again. That's a little bit too big. Make it some size that's bigger at a random size there. And then strike an arc in the middle. Do the same from the other side. And again, with my straight edge, I've only got to come out there about 2 inches off the edge of the sheet. The last thing to do is to mark those 2-inch dimensions there. I'll try to show you this on the tape measure. It's a little easier to read on camera than the ruler. So we're going to mark it at 1 inch and 2 inch. On both sides. And we'll square them up. Okay, if you notice really closely on the plan, they've got just a couple degrees setback on those, so when they bend them for that screen to set in, they don't basically stick out and create a sharp edge or anything sharper than they absolutely have to be. Initially, when I started this project, I thought I was going to do the left and the right, but I didn't do that. It takes about 19 or 20 some inches, actually probably a little more than that by the time you get your marks there to make your 180 degree straight sections, but the part itself is going to take up about 19 to 20 inches in width by about 16 inches in height there. So if I would have done the same over here, I would have run out of room because I've only got about 17 inches to play with. So that's option A, and then I guess option B would be to turn the sheet and make the mirror image to the other one, because that should give me my 19 inches in width and get my height again. What did I say, 16? Yeah, 16 inches in height, and still be able to use that sheet. So that's what I'm going to do next, is draw the mirror. Getting ready to make the mirror image of project 22 here. So we're going to start again by making that 3/4 inch dimension across the bottom and the 1/4 inch on the exterior side there, up the outside here. Got to come up at least 5 inches off the sheet, and that's going to get us that inner pivot point. Again, like I said, this is all mirror image of one another. So the first thing I want to do is I want to establish these dimensions across the bottom. So starting from the outside, we got a 1/4 inch dimension right here, which I've already marked with the scribe. It's very faint though, you got to really look for that one. And the next one is 6 plus the 1/4, or 6 1/4 inches. Followed by an additional 1/4 out here for 6 1/2. On that mark there. And then what we've got to do is we got to measure up 5 inches on that mark off the bottom of the sheet on both edges. That's going to establish this mark up here, and then we've got to go from our 6, or rather from the edge of the sheet, 6 1/4 inch point here, an additional 4. So from the edge of the sheet, we're looking at 6 and 4 is 10 1/4 inches in at the 5 inch height. So somewhere up in this area, we're going to establish our pivot point. And from my previously marked 5 inch dimensions there, I'm going to run a straight edge across until I hit that point over here, and then again verify my measurement of 10 1/4 inches right there. 10 1/4, I'm going to put a small divot in the part to indicate that is my pivot point here for the 135 degrees. And then I'm going to take my square and I'm going to square that up right on through at that dimension, because I'm going to need a 90 degree point sooner or later here, so I can make up the 135 degrees with the 90 and the 45 degree mark here. So I'm going to run these both beyond that quite a ways. This is my 5 inch dimension. I'm going to go way beyond here, and I'm going to take that above that as well. So here I've got a 90 degree section. I'm going to have a 6 inch opening, and that throat's going to roll around this way, mirror image of that in the plan. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take and I want to establish this 135 degree mark. In order to do that, 90 plus 45 would give me the 135 degrees. So I've got a 90-degree corner here, so I'm going to bisect that using my dividers set to some random dimension. Just lock it down, put a strike there, strike an arc, and we're going to strike an arc here as well. And then we will open it up. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't have to open it up because it's under 180 degrees. We're just going to set it and bisect the two previously drawn arcs there. And then with your straight edge from those pivot points, we're going to pull that out there quite a ways to establish that 135 degree mark. Right there. So all the way up and around is our 135 degree point. Let's finish up some of this back down here now. Again, from the edge of the sheet, I already marked the first 5 inches in height of the straight section, and then I'm going to move over here, and I previously pulled the tape measure to establish the 6 1/4 inch dimension and the 6 1/2 inch dimension. Now I'm just going to use my square, find my points back, and square them up to the 5 inch height. And if we did that correctly, in between the marks up here, we should have the 6 inch dimension, which we do. So that's good. The next thing for us to tackle then is to strike the arc for the throat and the heel in the mirror image. So with my dividers, I noticed that from my pivot point to the innermost point, we've got a 4 inch radius. So back to our square, I'm going to set this at 1 inch and 5 inches for a total of 4 inches. If I can ever get it to set right. And then I'm going to pull that first inner mark. And I brought that all the way around to my 135 degree area. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my plan, and I notice that I've got to deduct a 1/4 inch off my setting of my dividers. So again, I'm just going to set it on my square, which was 1 and 5 previously. We're going to set it 1 and 4 and 3/4 for that total dimension of 3 and 3/4 between the points here. And then we're going to strike that arc as well. And that will make up my throat for the easy edge right there, all the way down to that point. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish this the heels arc out here, which is a dimension from my pivot point of 4 plus 6, or we got 10 there. And grab my square again. So I'm going to set it at the dimensions 1 and 11 for a total of 10 inches. Move the book up out of the way of the plan, and then again, that should come out just a 1/4 inch from the edge there. We pull that around to the 135 degree mark. And then lastly, finish my radiuses with that total dimension, 6 and 4 is 10, plus the additional 1/4 inch, or rather 10 1/4 inches is what we're looking for there. So back to the ruler, which was 1 and 11 previously, is now going to be 1 and 11 and 1/4. Just got to make sure I find the right dimension there, right there. And back to the sheet. Verify that it comes out on the edge there, which it does. And pull that around to 135 degrees. Just about wrapped up here with these two projects for the left and the right cheeks, at least as far as the dimensions go, but we got just the last 2-inch areas that we need to be setting up for the fold so we can attach a screen in this this gooseneck fitting. So I can figure out a way to get my straight sections off of here to keep my parts in line. And what we're going to do with that, a simple method would be just to simply take the dividers and strike an arc at 180 degrees, making certain it's long enough to reach there without having to redraw the line, unless you want to extend the line, which would be more precise. But I think I got enough here to do it for this straight section. And we're going to strike an arc and spin it around and do the same. And then because it's 180 degrees, we got to open it up to some larger random size. And then move over to those previously struck arcs there. And then in the middle out here somewhere, we're going to find our crosshairs. And where they cross, right here, I don't know if you can see that, but that's where those two crossed each other, will be a straight dimension. You only got to bring that out about 2 inches, so I've exceeded that a little bit. And then we'll do the same on this other side. And I'm working from my inner 1/4 inch marks on both of these, so I'm trying to be as consistent as possible, making the arcs, make it larger by some random size, and then it should be out here someplace where they're going to cross. Right here. And again, that straight edge has only got to come out there about 2 inches to make those last 2 dimensions on here. So with my tape measure, I'm just going to show those marks. Starting at the 2, I've got a dimension mark here at 1 inch and the foot mark. And then we'll move down to the other half of our 6-inch rule, our 6-inch opening, and mark them as well. And then with the square, we'll square both them up. Okay, that concludes the layout part of this procedure for the gooseneck, the 135-degree gooseneck that you can attach a screen to. So we are going to continue on here with the cutting out procedure. Okay, because this sheet's so big, before I go to cutting this thing out, I'm going to take it up to the shear and I'm going to separate the right-hand cheek from the left-hand cheek up there, and then just kind of clean this thing up, bring it down to a more manageable size. Okay, here we are at the shear. We're just going to slice the 2 parts to separate one from each other. So there's the left-hand cheek and the right-hand cheek. And let's kind of clean this one up a little bit as well. Make that a little bit more manageable. So making certain I don't cut just anything too much extra. Alright, we've got a left hand and a right hand cheek that's much more manageable to cut out now, so let's go do that next. Okay, here we go. Let's cut this thing out with our 10 snips then. You can use a couple different shears, but eventually you'll probably be using your offset when you get to that radius. If you like, you can cut your straight sections with your long aluminum snips. That seems to work pretty well in these areas. Just remember that you need to cut on the outside dimensions there. And then once you get that far, you can continue on with your snips with the offset handles for cutting radiuses. There we got something that's looking a little more like a gooseneck. There was a 5-inch straight section here on the back, so that's approximately about where the radius should have stopped and should have started cutting in at. Okay, that's the big bulk of the material there anyway. So now let's do some of the finer fabricating. If you look at the plan, you'll notice that this edge is just got a couple degrees set back, nothing too major, just maybe a 1/8 of an inch or something like that on the 2-inch difference there, which can be freehand cut. And then on the base down here, we just take our 3/4 inch notcher on our 1/4 inch marks there, and then take those chunks out of there. Okay, there you have it, the 135-degree left-hand cheek for the gooseneck elbow. So I'm going to continue cutting out the right-hand cheek. Okay, let's finish this up. So with my notcher on the base there, again on the 1/4 by 3/4 marks. And lastly, I've got to take out these corners with just a couple degree little setback there for the screen holder to keep any rodents out of it or anything like that. Or maybe you want to put a damper on it or whatever the case may be. or a register grill maybe, I don't know, stuff like that. Alright, there we've got it. Hopefully that helped. The last thing we got to do yet tonight here is run it through the easy edger. So we're going to do that next. You'll notice tonight this one turned out with a lot of ripples, so I'm going to actually kind of flatten that out on the bench there, and then increase the tension a little bit, and then run it through again. That second time, that should help tremendously with smoothing them out. And you might want to run it a third time. That's up to you. That turned out pretty good. And then we'll do the same on the inside. So this one's kind of challenging. You got to watch where you start the handle here. Make sure you maybe get it out of the road here somewhat. And that one didn't turn out just too bad. And then we'll finish the last one. And that one turned out really nicely. So let's finish up the inside. But that should take care of it with the left and the right hand 135 degree gooseneck elbow, which works out really nice. So I hope you enjoyed building the left and the right hand cheek. If with that, we'll catch you on the next one, which we're going to fabricate the throat and the heel for this elbow. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.